minutes. But first, let's get back to the top of the hour and talk to the lead of Young Voices UK, Jason Reed. Hello, Jason, and a very happy new year to you.
Happy New Year, Kevin.
Let's hope it's going to be better than last year. I don't think it can be any worse, to be honest with you. And I wanted to talk to you as a young person. I think not enough is being made of the catastrophic, traumatic effect that this COVID crisis, now 2 years old and still sadly going strong, has had on your generation. You know, your generation, they're people, we're not talking about kids at university. I'm talking about, I mean, bad enough for them. I mean, university students have been basically conned out of their university lives, charged £9,000 a year to sit at home and watch their lecturers on Zoom, and that's another issue. School kids, even worse. But what I'm thinking about is people like yourself, young people coming out of university. You know, it's the most exciting time of your life. You get your job applications in, you're thinking of your career. What do you want to do? You want to be a lawyer? Do you want to work in the office? Do you want to, all these things? This has been deprived. You have been deprived of all this. It's a terrible time for young people, isn't it?
It's a terrible time for young people. It's unsurprising that we have a mental health epidemic that is being effectively caused by lockdown and its consequences among students and among recent graduates for exactly the reasons you say, because we're all being locked in our homes, and then at the end of it, we don't have an opportunity to get a job because every extra day that we stay in lockdown is trashing the economy, and we all know that. And it was a long, long time ago that any benefits of lockdown were outweighed by the immense costs, economic, if nothing else. But of course, we don't need to worry because Rishi Sunak is giving hotels and pubs £1,000 each. So that's going to save us all from all the lost business as a result of lockdown. But you're absolutely right that young people are having a really tough time of it. And there isn't really much of a difference now between the students and the recent graduates that you described, because the pandemic's been going on for so long. People who were in university at the start of the pandemic are now exactly those people you describe, who have graduated recently and are now looking for jobs. I'm 21 years old, so last year I graduated from university. About 50% of my degree or more was overshadowed by this dark cloud of COVID, where you had all these very, very weird methods of learning, where you had hybrid learning going on. Some people were on campus and some people were on Zoom. And obviously you have to get tested every day and you have to wear masks in the classroom. Some of the time, nobody was allowed on campus at all. You have all these weird restrictions like social distancing enforced by them saying you can't sit next to someone in the library. You have to leave a 2-meter gap or a 2-seat gap. And of course, resources are stretched in normal times, as any student will tell you. So that just means that there's no space to work in the library. And so our university education has been very seriously compromised by all of this, in addition to the university experience. It's supposed to be a formative part of your life. You're supposed to create lifelong relationships, friendships, and of course, kickstart your career. And all of that has been completely ruined by the madness of COVID restrictions.
Yeah, kid I know, even younger than you. By the way, 21 is obscenely young. You're banned from this show from now on. But seriously, a friend of mine, he's a kid. He's 20 years old, and he just finished university, and he landed a great job. I mean, you know, and we were all thrilled for him, and he was so excited. And this job, I mean, you know, I'm not saying that he's crestfallen, but this job turns out to be sitting at home talking to people on Zoom. So even the few people who do manage to get a great career break, which he's done brilliantly well, it's a brilliant job, except he's not getting the fun of, I mean, I went through that when I was your age. You come out of university, you get the job of your dreams. It's so exciting. You know, you're launching out on your life. And this is exactly what your entire generation has been deprived of. And that is a tragedy, frankly.
It is a tragedy. I went almost a year without meeting any of my colleagues in person. I started, as you know, I work with an organization called Young Voices UK, which lifts up young people's voices about politics. I expected when I started that organization that young people in Britain would be keen to talk about changing the world and about their dreams and ambitions for all the ways we can affect positive change. In reality, it's just been a year of moaning and saying, can we have our basic freedoms back, please? Can we be allowed to go to the pub? Can we be allowed to go out at night and see our friends and have fun without all these ridiculous draconian restrictions on the most basic activities at that most pivotal part of your life in your early 20s.
I think it needs to be prevailed upon the government, on Boris Johnson, the cabinet, the plight that we're talking about here. And I think Young Voices UK, for a kick-off, should maybe get something together and present it to the Prime Minister or to the cabinet and say, listen, you've got to do something about this. They've got to encourage firms to open up a bit more, to say to kids, to new employees, you can come into the office. You don't have to wear masks and look at your Zoom screen at home. Do you see what I'm saying? Well, there needs to be some sort of initiative to remind the government that among the many tragedies that have been caused by the COVID crisis is the predicament of young people who are not getting a fair start in life.
I completely agree. The perspective of young people has been sidelined consistently during the pandemic. You have those cabinet meetings and you have those meetings between the Prime Minister and senior officials and all the medical officials who show a graph with the number of hospital beds that are occupied going up or the number of cases going up, and they panic and they implement restrictions. And at no point during that process do they stop and think, what is going to be the effect on people, and more specifically, what is going to be the effect on young people? Are we thinking about the mental health consequences of these restrictions? Are we thinking about the impact on the job market, the people trying to get their first job on these restrictions? Most people my age, they should be thinking about the next step in their career, or they should be thinking about being able to buy their first home. But as you say, people have much lower expectations now. People just want a job. People just want to be able to support themselves. People just want to be able to see their friends and live a normal life. It feels like we've taken a huge step backwards. We've undone centuries of society's progress through these lockdowns, and it's going to take a long time, I fear, to unlearn a lot of these habits that we've slipped into with this, the phrase, the new normal. I find that terrifying, that we might just slip into this being the default status now.
Always hated the phrase new normal. What we need to do, and this is sort of the final question really, Jason, in my view, we need to get back to the old normal. Now, there are signs that we could do that in the not too distant future, because Omicron turns out almost certainly to be very good news. And all the statistics are heading in the right direction. Boris Johnson isn't threatening to lock us down. So we need to start to adopt a positive attitude. And the government, in my view, needs to start thinking very seriously about the day it says, right, back to normal. Don't you agree?
I do agree. It's very bizarre, this situation we found ourselves in, where we are so, or at least the people at the top of government are so reluctant to communicate any good news, like the fact that we might be nearing the end of the pandemic, like the fact that Omicron is by far the mildest variant of COVID that we've had so far, that we're much safer than we've ever been in terms of serious illness and hospitalizations and deaths from COVID. But they seem resistant to that. They don't seem to want to embrace it. They don't seem to want to celebrate it and allow us to enjoy the fact that our lives are going to go back to normal and shorten this misery and this economic damage from lockdown at all. They seem to want to prolong it because we've got medical officials effectively calling the shots now and running the country. And we don't have anyone on the other side of the argument saying, but what about freedom?
Yeah. I mean, to be honest with you, I just want to see, like when I was your age, happy young people getting drunk on a Friday night after a hard week in the office, and for that matter, Thursday or Wednesday as well. Just enjoying life, and you don't see that at the moment, and we've got to get that back. Great to talk to you, Jason. As always, we'll talk again this time next week. Jason Reed, head of Young Voices UK there. I'm Kevin O'Sullivan.